think we're ready to roll. And Danny, I'll get you to unmute when Pam is done as well.
So we're good, Judy?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So it is a beautiful summer day, especially here in Yarmouth because we're the Banana Belt. So welcome everybody, and thanks for hopping on a beautiful day. We have the Engage Nova Scotia webinar. We're going till about noon. So right now everyone's muted in order to avoid feedback during the presentation. So we'll hold questions until the presentations are completed to ensure you get to hear them all. And when the time comes, please feel free to type your question into the chat box. I think the last 5 or 6 months has taught everybody how to use chat on the side and to ask those questions that way. So that makes it a whole lot easier. We will, as I said, conclude by noon so we can allow people to get back to their busy days. Any questions that you have, concerns, anything like that that doesn't get covered or addressed within the hour, we'll make sure that we make note of them, and we will certainly provide the answers following the webinar. I want to acknowledge our NSFM staff that's with us today, and I'm going off of what I've seen, but I know Juanita Spencer, our CAO, Judy Weber, who set everything up, Debbie Nielsen is with us, and our new policy and project coordinator, Alexandra Barry. So welcome to the NSFM staff. And of course, we have Engage Nova Scotia's CEO, Danny Graham. Whoop, whoop. Hey, Danny. Danny is a great friend of mine. And I remember when Engage just got started and he made that phone call and said, what do you think? And I said, just get her going, because it's some important stuff going forward for the entire province. And everything they do is affecting every single one of us. So in March 2020, Engage Nova Scotia released the summary results of the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative. And they're preparing for the upcoming release of the results that focuses on life satisfaction. How do you love living in Nova Scotia? The results are broken down into 10 regions of the province. And it'll be the focus of Danny's presentation today to share some of that. So with that, brief and to the point, Danny, I'm going to pass it over to you. And thank you for doing this for us.
Thank you, Pam. Can you hear me now? I'm seeing the nods. Thanks very much. So let me just say at the beginning that this is a real honor and a great opportunity for us to again spend some time in a discussion with municipal leaders across the province. This is from our perspective, a critically important relationship for our NGO to have to understand and bring into effect the kinds of aspirations we have with you to ensure that our beautiful province lives up to its tremendous potential and sees ourselves more deeply and ultimately becomes a more vibrant, inclusive, and resilient place. We've been tested. We've been sorely tested over the last 5 months, and I think it has revealed to us in new ways who we are as a people, and the ways that we've come together, and who has been instrumental in making sure that that happens, and the way that communities of people who we might have at times not seen as clearly are now at the forefront of our understanding of what it takes to sort of have a strong and resilient society as we do. Our work has been about Nova Scotia sort of finding ways to be more collaborative and adaptive to change. And it feels a bit like the experiences we've had over the last 5 months have slowed us down and opened us up and invited a broader group of Nova Scotians into the conversation about who we are and what our future is. So I'm conscious that your municipalities and the people who live in your communities are experiencing a wide variety of things right now. For some, it's a time of tremendous uncertainty, and it would be for you as leaders. There is also, I think it's easy to recognize some people whose, for example, life savings have gone up in smoke because they've built a small business and now customers and clients aren't coming through the door anymore. And we really want to attend to the complexity of this challenge. And we're also noticing, and there's some evidence to suggest this, is that this is creating a shift in the psychology of our citizens about what matters most, what we value most. And that, to a certain extent, creates a window for us to reimagine an even better Nova Scotia than the one that we've had for a period of time, especially for communities of people who have too often been falling between the cracks. So I won't try to wax eloquent anymore. I really just want to say we continue to appreciate this relationship that we have. It actually began, I believe it was almost 7 years ago. I'm not sure if anyone who's on the line was part of a public engagement workshop that we had done in Truro about 7 years ago with the UNSM, as it was called back then, just beginning to sort of explore the idea of how we get closer to our citizens. So this is a critical time for all of us, and the slides that I have are available. I'm going to make reference to the ways in which you might be able to become involved at a later date. And perhaps the most important message that I would put out at the outset is that we are here with you. We know it's busy. It's an election year for all of you, for those of you who are reoffering. So that makes it extra busy in the coming months, but we'd really love to share more about what we're doing and in fact get into the conversations about where you are as a community. Here are the themes that I'll be touching on for today's presentation. It'll be about the quality of life initiatives that I hope all of you know about, what we did, what we've learned, and then I'll spend a little bit of time about the relationship between quality of life and economic conditions. And then perhaps most importantly, talk about what's happening in your regions and where you might be able to take this from here. So let's get started on the first issue with respect to what we did. This slide here is a depiction of the sum total of the work that we and some of you have done over the last year or so. You'll recall that we had a massive survey of 230 questions that we sent to 80,000 households in Nova Scotia, representing 1 in 5 households, and asked if you believe in the quality of life of Nova Scotians, please take the 45 minutes required to fill out this survey. When we went to pollsters and said what kind of a response rate would we get, they said, it's huge, maybe 2%. And that made us hold our breath because we were looking for 10% in order to meet the targets of being able to describe in each region of the province what's happening uniquely. We're delighted to report that as a result of the tremendous partnerships that we've had with municipalities and church groups and NGOs and government and school boards and so on, and most importantly NSCC, who are critical partners. You'll see in each of these regions, in almost every one of these regions, there's a campus. We ended up with a 16% response rate. And that makes this data set that we're sitting on the largest data set on quality of life anywhere in North America right now, which is, I think, a significant asset that will be important for all of us, and particularly local governments for the coming years. The breakdown of the regions you might have seen in other presentations, perhaps from provincial government people. It comes from StatsCan, where they've done some analysis to say, where really do people live, work, and play? Often the work that we've done in Nova Scotia has been broken down into, Cape Breton, rural mainland, and HRM, which really tells us nothing because the experiences of people in Yarmouth and Antigonish would be quite different, but they're lumped together. And even when they're broken down into 5 regions, and you've got the people in Guysborough County and the people in Cumberland County often lumped together, that really doesn't tell us much that we can work from. While this doesn't break this down to the 50 or so municipalities that we have, it gives us a statistically reliable set of results for every single one of these 10 regions across the province. And that, we think, is one of the things that sort of sets it apart. It's broken down into 8 domains, and I'll talk a little bit about what those domains really mean and why they're sort of considered in all of this. But to give you a feel for the kinds of questions that are contained in these 230 indicators, again, they're available for each of your regions. Many of these issues touch on priorities that would be important to you. All of this, I know, is important. You know, people's experiences of discrimination, but of course, their level of civic engagement, their experiences in their nearby environment and parks, their sense of community belonging, their overall life satisfaction, their trust in institutions, that includes governments of all levels, are the kinds of questions that we have now available for you to consider. And we've done a robust breakdown of the demographics of the respondents. And this can be broken down by people's age, gender, ethnicity, living circumstances, sexual orientation, income, and of course, region of the province. We spent extra effort wanting to get a sense of how underrepresented populations of people who often don't fill out surveys are doing. So with the support of people in those communities, we really put a push on in 2019 to make sure that those populations of people saw themselves in this and responded. So we released the first wave of results associated with this in March of this year, and it was just before the big COVID announcement. I hope that you saw some of what this is on our website, nsqualityoflife.ca. nsqualityoflife.ca. You'll be able to find the full report with all 260 or so pages. But to give you a sense of what those pages look like in that first wave of many waves, here's a sampling of one page. So this is just page 256 of these 260 or so pages, where we're asking people questions that might have seemed esoteric at the time, but I think are more pressing than they were before, about people's time stress. Do you have enough time to be yourself, to prepare your meals, to be with friends, to be with family, to participate in your community? And you'll see, I'm just going to see if I can move my icon. Here's how these rank across these 13 questions, where I'm moving my icon here across Nova Scotia. And the pink and the green simply shows when each of these regions, you'll see them, HRM, CBRM up at the top, all of your regions are represented, rank relative to this first column. So this just, we won't go into the details and the substance related to this. I just wanted to give you a feel for what that report that's available for all of you generally would look like in its current form. But again, this is just the first of many different ways in which we're going to be able to slice and dice this over many years. The topics that we're looking at are roughly broken down into a number of topics that you'd naturally expect, like people's health and their education and the environment and their level of education. But it also touches on things that the research suggests, surprisingly, are as significant a driver of people's happiness, purpose, and well-being as anything else. And that's whether they feel connected to their community and to others, whether they feel like they've got a good work, life, balance in what they're doing, whether they feel that they can do the things that express their creativity or allow for them to recreate and that sort of thing. So this was created through our partners at the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, and there's a ton that we've learned as a result. I'm going to give you just a sneak peek of this, because this is what you're going to see is barely the tip of the iceberg of the information that's available in what it is that we have. So here's a snapshot that has not been sort of yet shared publicly, but we will get into it in greater detail over time. And it'll give you a sense of how we break things down. So for each region of the province, we are able to tell you in each of those 8 domains how each region is doing relative to the provincial average. This is just one snapshot of the 10 that we would have. It shows how HRM is doing, and it signals that generally speaking, in the questions related to education, HRM does above the provincial average. When it comes to issues of community vitality and time use, however, it seems that there's some work that needs to be done. So just to reiterate that there are many questions that create the aggregate results that are associated with each of these bars. There's lots of detail to get into, and it's available again for each of the 10 regions. We can talk about how that breaks down and how that gets presented at a later date. But let's break it down a little bit further to talk about who demographically is doing well in Nova Scotia. And the way to read these pies, I'm just going to share with you very quickly 5 pies that sort of break down the experience of demographic groups in our province. You'll see from this slide, it relates to older Nova Scotians. And the solid dark line that's closest to the center represents the average for Nova Scotians, how they're doing in each of these general areas. And you'll see that pre-COVID, this was 2019, older adults actually report that they're doing reasonably well in each of the 8 domains. This came as a bit of a surprise to us as we went through it, and it doesn't, again, it's sort of an early snapshot of how people are doing. We know that seniors, especially as it relates to their isolation, have had tremendous difficulties over the last little while. So not sure how much that may have changed, and in particular for people who are in homes, who are older adults. Let's take a look at the populations that have not been doing as well. Just want to give you a feel for this. Again, this is something that we can understand better by region, but this is on average, newcomers, their reported sense of how they're doing in each of the 8 domains is actually below the provincial average. Their line is, again, the blue dotted line that is on the inner part of this circle that we have. Each of these domains, they're not doing so well in. And as you go through it, you see that people who report having a disability or a chronic illness of some sort are even more, are experiencing even greater challenges. What's interesting to note about this slide is that this represents almost 30% of Nova Scotia respondents, people who have disabilities or chronic illnesses. And Nova Scotia has had a significantly higher, or a higher reported number of people with disabilities than almost any other province in Canada. So this is a population that is significant, and their experience of what's happening, what their life circumstances are, should cause us some concern as we move forward. Probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that to see that people with lower incomes are also having difficulties in Nova Scotia in every one of the 8 domains that we have. So again, this is an issue, poverty, child poverty, significant issues that we as Nova Scotians need to do a much better job of getting a handle on. This points clearly to the challenges of people who are falling between the cracks because their economic security is just not what other people's is. What came as perhaps the biggest surprise for us in terms of who's not doing well are single parents. You'll see that the shrinkage in the line about their experiences in all 8 of those domains is significantly lower than those other people as well. So this has significant implications, public policy implications, we think, for COVID, amongst other things, and how we support those people who are more stressed because they're being asked to work and they're being asked to provide care for their children at a time when social distancing is required, which creates complications for opening daycares. I appreciate that some of them are open, but then there are challenges about having people come into their homes to take care of children. And when they go to school, go back to school, this is going to represent an additional stress for people who are single parents right now. So this again is just the beginning of a snapshot of what is an overview of what we want to point toward. The next wave of analysis that we're going to be unfurling will touch on deeper analysis related to the following 6 topics. 3 of them are particularly topical: poverty, discrimination, health, and in particular mental health. What we know is that people's experience of mental health is an enormous driver of their sense of well-being and life satisfaction. So we need to understand that better in a Nova Scotia context. Issues of discrimination are obviously more prominent now, in part as a result of Black Lives Matter, but we've known this for a long period of time. It's come to the surface. We need to get a better handle on who's experiencing it and why. Poverty obviously is clear to us as well. But these last 3, the issues of social isolation, community vitality, and trust, have received less attention over time, but frankly are, I would suggest, as important as the others. And it's an area where we as Maritimers, I think, probably have some things to celebrate and to worry about. There's, in general, in Eastern Canada, life satisfaction is higher than it is in other parts of the country. And it is believed amongst some of the researchers that some of the reasons for that is that there's a higher sense of community vitality and trust and less isolation than there is in other parts of the country. But it still is something that requires considerable attention as we move forward. If we're looking to move the needle on people's happiness, their well-being, and their resilience, then the issue of making sure that people are better connected to their communities and to each other and more trusting of institutions and governments like yours is really critical to how we move forward. So that brings us a bit to the question about, how have we been measuring our success as a society, and what attention have we been paying to communities of people who've been more vulnerable and who've fallen through the ice a little bit from time to time. This is a question that we've been quite focused on for some period of time. And what we want to stress is that the relationship between economic health and quality of life it's complex and it's closely related to each other. And it's important for us to sort of understand that it's not always just a linear relationship. The richer you are, the happier and more resilient you are. There's a nuance to it. There's clear signals that for people who are really poor, their economic conditions improving substantially increases their quality of life. But once we reach a certain threshold, life satisfaction, resilience, and well-being don't grow very much with increased income as we go through the ladder. So we asked Nova Scotians, you'll recall, you've seen this before, but I love popping this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, we should measure our success by the growth in growing our economy. And we got this response for people who answered 7, 8, 9, or 10 on the scale of 1 to 10. Then we repeated that question by saying we should measure our success by improving our quality of life. And you'll see that the response was substantially higher. And it was higher across every region and in every demographic slice we could put that through. Now, this is a bit dated. It was done 4 or 5 years ago. And we're actually in the field right now asking this question again. And next month, or the month after, we'll be able to publish where people sit in Nova Scotia with respect to this question as well. And the reason that we think it's important is because these two things are interdependent, quality of life and the economy, but we need to understand it at a different level than we've probably been assuming things so far. So this next slide won't come as a surprise to you when you see that at a global level, national wealth and quality of life or life satisfaction highly correlate. So those countries, according to the UN, that are the happiest, obviously, come from advanced economies, and those who are least happy, and happy is in quotations, this is life satisfaction, it's a rigorous process, are ones that struggle economically. But what's interesting to note is that using similar data, but also using World Economic Forum, Davos, indicators about which countries are leaving fewer people behind and are focused on a more inclusive society, more inclusive growth, and more inclusive economies, it is those countries that seem to correlate with life satisfaction. So the point, I think, behind this that relates to the earlier slides is that it's critical for everyone that we close the gaps for those communities of people in Nova Scotia who are falling between the cracks. As an aggregate, the expectation is that everyone's quality of life, everyone's life satisfaction grows as you include more people in the success and the opportunities of a society. You'll see in this slide that Canada ranks 9th on life satisfaction and 17th on an inclusive economy or an inclusive society. So just something for us as Canadians to continue to pay attention to as we go forward, because we think that this issue of quality of life is critical to how we move forward. So as a global priority, it seems clearer that this notion of going to places where there's a high quality of life and you won't fall between the cracks is a higher priority for communities in every country of the world. And what's interesting to note is that, and we've got research that supports this, including all the way down to Nova Scotia research, that suggests that people in rural communities, generally speaking, not universally, but generally speaking, people in rural communities have a higher life satisfaction than people who are in urban settings. HRM ranks high amongst the urban settings within Canada, I should add. But I think this is an advantage as people begin to start to ask themselves new questions. So you'll see here, young people increasingly are choosing places that have good quality of life as the place where they will focus their work. And this is a phenomenon that we think is going to be accelerated as a result of COVID. So what's happened in COVID? We think, and in fact, there's some federal research that has not yet been released that we've been made aware of that shows that Canadians are in a process of reflection and asking themselves questions about what really matters. Where is my life going, and why do I choose to live it this way? And in the course of that, who's not succeeding, and where could I live my life, and what's actually possible? This all happens at a time when moving online, as we're doing right now, has become normalized for all of us. And that, we think, creates incredible opportunities for great places like Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada for people to live. So for those people who are sitting back, and we all know of those who moved from, exist in my home, back from Toronto to live closer to the place where they feel connected, they're now sort of looking at the high rents that they're paying or whatever else and saying, why would I choose to go back when I've been successful in my work and heading to the beach or hanging out with in an environment where I feel more connected to the community? That, we think, creates enormous opportunities for us. I can't stress this enough from my perspective. This is the window. This is an historic opportunity for us to thread the needle. We are, you know, it might sound audacious to say, but we are the jurisdiction that is ahead of the curve more than any other Canadian one, for sure, in focusing on a broad agenda about improving quality of life. No other jurisdiction has the level of data that we have. No other jurisdiction is asking the questions around quality of life at the depth that all of our community leaders are from one end of the province to the other. And the question that arises for me, and this might sound like an overstatement, but we need to sort of reach high, but is this region of the country, this region of the world, actually one of the last best places when you look at how we've not just flattened the curve, but we've had this tremendous success? It comes about of, I think, as a result of some of the things that are intrinsically valuable to us in the way in which we've demonstrated how we can come together. Now, with that comes the uncertainty and the challenge of becoming an economically more independent region, connecting ourselves digitally to the internet so that we actually do become attractive places for people from other parts of Canada to live, work, play, and raise a family. But that's a lot of work, but we think that it's exactly, in a sense, to use a bit of a sports metaphor, the game is coming to us. The ball is sort of falling to our feet in soccer terms, and we're in the slot and we can put it in. But we need to do this in a way that really takes advantage of our strengths. And our strengths are in our regions, the ones that you represent. Just to remind you that we have these 10 regions of the province that we've been told are important. We've been fortunate to have the support of tons of organizations. And I apologize if you're interested in having your municipality associated with the work that we're doing and it's not up there, but you'll see many of them listed in this group that sort of signed on to be significant supporters of the survey efforts that we had done last year. So the diversity of sectors, the diversity of geography that is represented in this group of supporters when we put our survey out is important. If you're interested in also signaling that you support this general direction and you want to go, I'm going to be talking a little bit about connecting in with us on where this is going and what's happening. So the most important thing, however, is to sort of think through, and this is where I want to just sort of round up my part of presenting on this, is just to give you a signal of what's happening in your local area and what role might municipal leadership play in making this happen. So again, our view is that municipal leadership is critical to the future of any part of Canada, of course, but Nova Scotia in particular. And we have been fortunate, again, with the significant support and leadership of the community college and the community college principals, but with others, to form local leadership teams in all of the regions that we had on that map earlier. I was taking stock recently, and every one of those leadership teams has a municipal leader of some sort on it, but we can use more, frankly. And you'll see that the local leadership team, from our point of view, needs to be connected to a diversity of sectors and demographics. So where we have down at the bottom of the blue part of that wheel, local public sector, we think it's absolutely essential for municipalities to be involved, or as involved as they can, in the efforts that are being made to understand, interpret, and engage people on the questions of what from this quality of life work is of greatest importance to the people in our region, and what's already happening, and how can we connect up and put some initiatives together that perhaps knit the social safety net together a little bit more, and or take advantage of something that's really a bright light that could be an attractor for young talent for your region, or creates an opportunity for small businesses to sort of really grow in some other fashion. So the business community, community sector, and we think if there's some way of getting those unaffiliated people, people who normally don't come out to public meetings, we've talked about the challenges of this, into the conversation about what's the future for our region of the province, then that's a bit of a game changer. So we have strategies with the local leadership teams that we want to deploy. It will be different in every region to sort of move this out. Can't stress enough that having your involvement or participation in that sort of work will be critical to that success. So how might you become involved? We've presented, sometimes it's been local leadership teams. For those of you in the Strait, Western Cape Breton region, you'll recall that local leadership team members came and presented. In the neighboring area of Antigonish-Guysborough, the leaders of that team happen to be the mayor of Antigonish and the warden of Antigonish County. So we're well set, and the director of development in Guysborough, so that we're well set with respect to some to sort of have that level of engagement. Just before COVID, we presented to all councils and in the Pictou area to explain in greater detail, this is what is important, would love for you to be more involved. Both the local leadership team person and I were present to do that. And reach out to us if you'd like to say, okay, I'm not sure if this is exactly what I want to do, but let's figure out more whether we should have somebody on that local leadership team to help inform with business, community, and others to make this happen. There's going to be an outreach to make this stronger over time. There are existing reports. So first wave came in March with respect to those big tables that I showed you from page 256. We are soon going to be talking about the next wave of analysis around those 6 topics I mentioned earlier: discrimination, trust, social isolation, etc. And in development is an online tool that will allow you to say, I live in Cumberland County, I want to know the experience of women of this particular age around questions of shelter security or something like that. And with some pushes of the button, our hope is that you're going to be able to get data that gives you a sense of 2019, a valuable data for your region of the province. So we can put you in touch with the who's helping to lead this. It's still in its early stages. It's many years, many people, many ideas that will make this a success. Your role in all of this will be critical. So I apologize for the length of that and hope that we've left enough time for rich questions for you to bring back to me. And if we don't finish within the time that's been set, we'd love to take it offline and speak to you in more detail about how you might become involved or what information from this will be most relevant to you. Judy, I'll take a breath then.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Actually, you're bang on for your time, so you didn't go over it all, which is great. We do already have some questions that have been popped into the chat there. So one, we had Andrew asking you for the definition of a newcomer.
That was self-identified for people. They self-identified. So the 12,800 people were asked whether they've, I'm trying to remember if they're new to Nova Scotia in the last 2 years or something like that. I don't think there was an international, for example, dimension to that question, but it's, I can provide him and you with the specific details of how that was defined up in our demographic section.
Sure, that'd be great. Earlier we had Heather say, sorry, did I miss the percentage? That was the response rate. And then someone did answer in the chat, actually it was Andrew, said 16%. So is that's accurate, Danny? Okay.
Yep, a little over 16%.
Great. So Rachel Bailey, where does Finland rank as an inclusive country? They appear to be an anomaly.
Yeah, they are. That came as a surprise to me when I looked at the data. Finland ranks high on happiness, and they recently had their experiment with a universal basic income, which suggests that, generally speaking, they're trying to make sure that they're closing the gaps for people. I'd be surprised if it was outside the top 20 of the 150 or so countries that were measured in that data set, but my recollection is that it doesn't fit into the top 10.
Okay. Ian Morrison has two questions for you. The first is, what makes you think that this mode of lifestyle reflection will continue post-COVID?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball on that, so I think the question's a valuable one, and it's all my sense, for what it's worth, is that there are three paths in front of us. One is that we go back to the status quo that we were in, or we try to find our way back to that in whatever fashion that balance is. Another is that we actually deepen the more polarized and fragmented ways in which we were moving. And I think that, the big challenges of our time, this is, arguable, but I think the consensus around the notions of inequality, environment, and political polarization are really ripping us apart right now. That could become worse if people continue to operate from a place kind of fear and scarcity over time. I think we all should be sensitive to the experiences of everyone in society in what COVID has brought. And for some, it's understandable that they would be fearful and that they would want to sort of get back to anything they can hang on to that feels steady and similar to what it was like before. My sense is, and the federal polling that's happening right now would suggest, that there has been a real shift in the way that people are, at least in this early stage, reflecting. But whether that becomes a sustainable something, I think depends in part on the conversations that we have in our personally and collectively about what matters most. And if I could say something about the ways in which I know that you have been fighting to sort of rebuild in your regions of Nova Scotia, is that we've recognized who's falling between the cracks. Some of it we knew before. We also are recognizing that it is store clerks and delivery people and people on minimum wage who's actually kept this net together to a certain extent. And so as we build the thought leadership and coalition of people who will try to reimagine what the next normal is, it will be important, if we're going to be successful, to have an inclusive process and not just to have the usual voices of veteran, experienced, and capable, earnest people, but still part of the usual group in the conversation. So the extent to which we can diversify the voices in the Build Back Better, if you will, kind of discussions, I think the more likely it is that we will have a sustained new something instead of reverting back to the other pieces. It's been a tectonic shift. 200 years has been crunched into 5 months, it feels like, in terms of some of the changes. That might be overstating it, but it's significant, and for us, it represents a challenge and a wicked opportunity.
Thank you, Danny. Ian's second question is, how do you communicate this last best place in the world to the rest of the world?
Well, I'd be interested in other people's ideas about that. It's a question that we at Engage have been sort of sitting on for a while. And I think it's, this is a big narrative piece. gonna riff a bit as somebody who's been in the questions about the future of Nova Scotia for over 20 years, and what I think we've been missing. I think that fundamentally we have as a province been somewhat insecure and lacking identity and fragmented geographically. We actually have some research that would suggest that in fact is so. And we never realized that, in the words of the Bank of Nova Scotia, we're actually richer than we think. And in order to get to that point, we needed to stop staring at Bay Street and other places as the mecca of happiness and consider what's already here as as what has possibilities. And we have a lot of work to do in many areas, often economic, poverty, child poverty, huge issues, that sort of thing. But I believe deeply that we're richer than we think. And I think that now is the time that people are asking those questions. And we all have a role to play in, searching out the question of what really is happening, what's stirring for you, what do you want most? And then if it is, let's just go back to that slide that I shared about single parents for a moment. And we now can see nakedly that they are suffering. So what are the choices that we decide to do as a community to make potentially more flexible work hours, work from home for parents, knitting together greater support for childcare, for example, specific tactical things that will ensure that we don't go back to that before. And so there's those tactics, but then there's the lens through which I would invite us all just to sort of pay attention to that slide where, at least a few years ago, there was that 68% and 81%. Let's, in our stories with people, reinforce that as both something that's real and something that's connected. We need a healthy economy in order to have a good quality of life. But let's not have the economy be the proxy for our success alone. It's notable that the UK, in its measurement of GDP growth, includes the black market, natural disasters, the drug trade, prostitution. Those are all things that grow the economy, but in no way are contributing to a healthier society. So if we use that as just an element of our considerations for how we move forward, I think that we'll realize potential that's beneath the surface and already there, that already reflects that this is one of the best places to live anywhere.
Thank you for that, Danny. That's all the questions that have been put in the chat so far, but we certainly have a few more minutes if anyone has anything else that they'd like to ask Danny. Okay, here we go. From Andrew. Was there a review of what are the top 5 or 10 issues you think should be improved in Nova Scotia to further cement that quality of life view?
So the choice of the topics that we chose, just going to go back to this, Andrew. See if I can find them quickly. Those topics that I put on the screen just now are ones that we had some early sense are high priority areas, both from understanding the Nova Scotia data and understanding the international research with respect to what drives life satisfaction, resilience, longevity, purpose, and those sorts of things. So we use that to sort of narrow in on this, but it's still a bit of a hypothesis that these are critically important issues. I think something much more nuanced than these 6 topics can emerge from this over time as we dig into it, and it's going to require us to better analyze this. So we're working with Dalhousie and Research Nova Scotia and others to sort of understand the results of this in a more specific way. And if you have lanes into resources that would provide deeper research on this, we would welcome a discussion about how we can better understand issues that might be of priority to your communities.
Thank you, Danny. My coworker has alerted me that Heather, did you have your hand up? Did you have a question for Danny? You'll have to unmute yourself in order to, yeah. There you go.
I was just typing away thinking, okay, I'll just have to write this down. And I was thinking, I don't really know how to word this. But initially, when we started the committees to get this survey out there and get as much response back as possible, it was, I'm not sure if it was actually instigated by the province of Nova Scotia, but there were dotted lines. I mean, and there was, I was just trying to remember how it came about, because I want to make sure that this information is linked back to the province. Will the province be using this information for policy making in the future?
So just to reiterate, we are an independent NGO that makes our strategic decisions about how to move entirely independently. But we also do it in close consultation and at times collaboration with key partners, the province being one of those. So they have been enthusiastic supporters of the advancement of the survey. They've talked about it. The deputy ministers have sent messages to in the early stages about the importance to people in their regular capacities that if you receive this, please fill it out. And we now have a link back into the province about the different ways departments can begin to use this. I presented to the deputy ministers, all deputy ministers in their COVID recovery recently, and talked about the importance of including this as their build back priorities. And we're just building lanes into each of the departments that are most relevant to this in the early stages, so that the researchers in those departments begin to sort of dig into this and set this as a priority. So the work with Research Nova Scotia that we're hoping to explore right now, for example, is one piece of this. We want to understand better the experiences of African Nova Scotians. And so we're exploring the possibility of using some of their resources to better understand that and work in a collaborative space with the African Nova Scotian community to have them partner with us in making it happen. So it's one example, but our hope is that not just with the province, but with HRM, and you might be able to think through ways in which either through NSFM or through collections of municipalities, you might be able to sort of say, this is too important for us not to sort of have better answers in our region around questions X or Y. That could be a for instance about where we go through the works of the local leadership team, where you come to a point where you say, wow, I didn't expect to see that. We need to understand it a little bit better. And it might not be that difficult to do some additional analysis so that you can work collaboratively in your regions on things that are of priority to you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's an incredible amount of information, and quality of information is astounding. And I'm just looking at it now thinking, you know, we're aligning so much with our municipality right now and what we're doing and where we're going. And obviously there's a lot of information that where we need to go and what things we need to work on and focus on now. So it's very exciting. And I'd like to see, you know, a lot of, when you talk about, you know, groups in our communities that are disadvantaged, you know, that links back to not only the provincial government, but also the federal government, if we're going to help these situations. So we need to feed that information back to our federal counterparts as well.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
Thank you for that, Heather.
Thanks.
So Lynn is asking, can we send out copies of the slide to everyone? We actually will have those posted up on our website, Lynn. It might take a little bit because our communications advisor is going to be going off on vacation next week, but if she has time this afternoon, we'll try to get it up, and if not, it'll be soon. So, and you can certainly email anyone at the office, and before she comes back from vacation, certainly happy to send it out to you in advance, or anyone at Engage Nova Scotia as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any more questions from anyone? Okay, I think we're good, Danny. Thank you everyone for joining us today, especially on this beautiful sunny summer day. We had a really good turnout, which is fantastic. We have recorded this webinar and it will be posted up on the website on our YouTube channel. Also, as I mentioned, the PowerPoint presentation, Engage Nova Scotia has agreed for us to post that up as well. And certainly you can follow up with anyone at NSFM or with anyone at Engage Nova Scotia should you have any further questions for them or want to get involved. So thank you so much, Danny, for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and the whole team at Engage Nova Scotia for helping to put it together.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Yes, thank you.